that they had a, unforeseen circumstance that has left them either, with food insecurity, housing insecurity, or all the way to folks who have been referred from school, the school psychologists or the school guidance counselors for a variety of reasons, or folks that are in town that have identified either neighbors or friends or anything else like that. The bulk of the work has really been absorbed by Bonnie Wilbur, who has been in the role now for about 5 years. And prior to that, the woman's name was Eileen Buford, and she began actually 100% grant funded through the community chest, and she was part-time. And then as her caseload grew, my predecessor, Doug Marr, was very instrumental in getting human services to rise to the forefront, and some money was put into the town budget to supplement. And so Eileen's job grew by a few hours each fiscal year. And when Eileen left, she moved to be with her husband, who's in the military. They moved down south. It became a full-time position, and over the course of 4 fiscal years, we phased out the community chest grant, and the town absorbed it. And so last year was the first year that the town was 100% responsible for the entirety of the salary. And I think that was an agreement that we had made in 2016-ish, 2017, with the director of the community chest, because we recognized that this is a staple for the community, and really was, a job in and of itself that that the community needed to be supportive of by way of tax dollars.
Thank you very much. That was really helpful for my understanding of things. Sorry to interrupt the flow of the meeting.
No, it's fine. That's what we're here for. Yes, Nancy. I think you got to take off mute.
There you go. I had a few questions. I was interested to know she worked full time, right?
Yes.
How many hours, Kate, does she work?
So,
40 hours or?
Yeah, so she's an exempt employee. So, a minimum is 40.
Yeah.
I think in a general week, she can see anywhere between 40 and, 45, 46. Certainly, there are times of the year that it could be more than that, particularly around holidays, around the time where school is getting out and then school is getting back into sessions. Those are usually times that we sort of see an uptick in people who are at those transitional need times and need a little bump. My position has supplemented that, meaning the deputy town manager has supplemented some of the overflow. And I understand that Kelly Hebert, who is actually here, I can see in the audience, is going to be in the interim taking on some of those responsibilities. So I would say that, there's probably a solid 50 hours worth of, work in this particular division. And I would say, 40-ish is absorbed by Bonnie.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I feel like I can see the write-up was really excellent, made a huge difference. And when you're reading it, you realize between COVID and everything that went on, I'm sure that she really worked a lot of hours. It's nice to know she's compensated for the extras. But when I see this salary now, so you're looking at, we're looking at $73,080 at $35 an hour.
That's her, yes, that's her salary currently.
Okay. Oh, she is, okay. Yeah, I have to say that I feel like in general, my health background anyways, I feel some of the salaries of our healthcare people are a little bit below what I think they should be at. But particularly for her in this role, it sounds like she's really doing a wide range of services that she coordinates, from somebody that's an elder down to somebody that's in their youth. So, I mean, I think that takes quite a person to be able to adapt to all of that. So I certainly think that it needs to move up. I'm wondering if it, I'm just saying this, that I'm wondering that if it wouldn't be even a little bit more money as time goes on or sooner. Okay.
Sure. So just to speak to that a little bit, there's sort of two requests, and this is part one of that. So what I am asking, should the board approve that the function range match the HS1, is that that Bonnie, or the community services coordinator, receive an increase on top of the $35. So it would be an equity or market adjustment, and that it would be retro to the 1st of January of this year. And that would move her up in the range, but also give her the earning potential. And I don't disagree. I wish that that we had, some infinite supply of money, as I'm sure most department heads do. I'm trying to balance this with the social services supervisor position that's within the Council on Aging, that while there isn't a wide range of ages that are there that covers their supervisory responsibility. And so I try to see the two as sort of peers in different capacities, certainly, and I'm trying to maintain the internal equity between the two, which is why I didn't want to just say, and why don't we offer her a $15,000 raise or something like that. And it isn't that Bonnie or anybody in this role wouldn't be, totally worth it. And I agree, just with having a social worker background, I agree that they're notoriously underpaid. But I also want to make sure that I'm being fair and equitable to the others. So I think that it's sort of a slow and steady wins the race. And I also want to make sure that it's affordable for the community, and we can do it both inside the levy limit and inside what we have available for salaries for FY23 as well.
Okay.
So.
All right, I appreciate all that. One last thing is, what about grants for just that group in general? Is there somebody? I mean, there must be some for some of the positions that hopefully could bring in some more money to the town. I realize that things have been tough on the town budget as well. So, but that's just a thought. I would like to see if it's possible that somebody would be able to work on some of that to help. Thank you.
I'm sorry, grants for salaries or just for programming?
Well, I was thinking of grants to get some money to be able to use it for either or, but something that would give some extra money to show that they are, deserving of an increase too. Thank you.
I think one of the takeaways for me on this is it clearly is a good segue in our agenda tonight when we move to we're not going to get there just for a little bit, but the class and comp study planning and what that particular project and effort is all about and what the potential results would be. So I think that's, we'll wait before we get there. Any other comments regarding the adjustment to the salary range?
Yeah, I have one quick question. So as I look at this, and I think many of us are well aware of the demand on within healthcare, both towns and otherwise. So we're moving the range for one. What about the other ones, right? So now all of a sudden the maxes of those ranges are low. Would we not move the range for all of them? Or is there a need?
Do you want me to answer that? I think that you're onto something there, and my proposal, if my last day were not this Friday, would be to come back at another time. And so I'm thinking that you might hear from someone else later to up the range of the social services supervisor who I was just speaking about. But I think in the interest of time, we've been working with the social services supervisor who has not had as much longevity as the person that's in the community services role right now. And this was something that Amy kindly let me finish up before before my departure, because we had been working on it for some time. But I do think that during the class and comp, if this isn't, you know, directly a part of it, I think that you'll be likely hearing about sort of maybe either absorbing social services out of a separate schedule now that it's more tax-based rather than grant, or some other schematic that you all will see that captures a salary that's more in line with market.
Does that, Jim, answer your
Yep.
questions?
Yep.
Okay. Because I sort of share, Jim, your concern about that particular aspect, but I think in light of all of the variables here, we should move ahead with approving this particular range adjustment for the community services coordinator. So I think unless there's anyone else who wants to ask a question or has a comment, why don't we, I'll entertain a motion to make this adjustment.
That's fine. I'll move to amend the miscellaneous comp schedule 7-3 human services by adjusting the salary range for community services coordinator function as proposed.
Is there a second? Okay, Nancy, you're seconding. All in favor, Nancy Crowley,
Aye.
Jim Richardson,
Aye.
Liz Cobbs,
Aye.
and Bill Marachek. Aye. All right. I want to. I had a senior moment in which I had really planned to welcome Liz in a much more formal and polite way. So I do apologize for waiting to this particular point. The only thing that I guess is helps compensate for that, as I did several days ago, ask Liz to give a little bit of her background to obviously not only the committee or the personnel board, but also to citizens who might be watching this on Zoom, and there certainly are some that are watching on Zoom. So we welcome you, Liz. I apologize again for waiting so long to get to that point. And could you just share with us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you very much. And also for the heads up a few days ago, Bill. So my family and I moved to Concord in July of 2020. So if anyone's seen me without a mask, it's probably one or two of you only. We've only been here during the COVID pandemic. So it's very nice to start to open up and to get to know people and have this first assignment on the personnel board. I really appreciate it. I have a lot to learn, obviously, as a new resident in Concord, but I'm here, and Bill has been very kind to reach out a few times to help me understand the role for the committee. I did go and get signed in and sworn in the other day, and got some materials to read in the background as well. So I'll try to learn quickly. In terms of my own background, I'm a sociologist by training. I have a background in sociology and a specialization in organizations and systems analysis, but also in Japan, of all things. So in my academic days, I taught about Japan, Japanese society, culture, and policy systems, education systems, and so on. I then left academia, and I spent 19 years in a corporate setting working for Merck pharmaceutical company. At that time, I joined in 2001, and I left them just 2 years ago. During that time, I worked in Japan, I worked in Europe, and in various roles in the United States. So in terms of my background that's helpful, I hope, for this committee, I handled teams in all of those countries. Merck was acquiring a Japanese company when they sent me to Japan. And I was involved in a fascinating process of integrating HR systems and moving people from a domestic Japanese setting to a global company setting. So with all the very interesting stories, maybe for another time, that I could share with you about the differences in those things, but they really brought to light how important management of personnel is in any organization. So I spent a lot of time in my 19 years with Merck managing teams and their budgets, managing their salaries and compensation schedules, working closely with HR partners, never in HR. And did a lot in terms of motivation. I felt like that was a very important piece of management, is really understanding how to keep people motivated and on target. And obviously with the discussion we just finished and the way that Kate described things, that is important to this team as well. Motivating people by the appropriate compensation is obviously a big part of that too. So I hope some of my experience can be helpful on the committee, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Again, welcome. And I'm sure we will call upon you to for some information and guidance and so forth as we work together as a board. I guess, maybe the other thing, just it's not on the agenda, but just to acknowledge Kate Hodges, and she certainly has been a valuable party to many of the classification and job descriptions and so forth. Obviously, without Kate's involvement and Kate and Amy working together, we wouldn't, I think, have succeeded in having so much, defined as it needs to be. So Kate will be missed, and we wish her well in her next assignment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
It's been my pleasure.
All right, let's move on to the Personnel Board warrant articles. Amy, can you just sort of summarize where you think we're at on this?
So the public hearings were held, now I've lost track of what month it is, was that in February? And Bill presented. We, at this point, I don't think we got any significant feedback that I am aware of that would mean that there was a controversial matter or suggestion that the board should consider a different approach. And my understanding is that the moderator is not aware of anything controversial on those articles. And so therefore they have been placed on the consent calendar. And that means that there would not be a presentation at town meeting unless the voters, I believe it's 5 voters, are asked to remove it or vote to remove it from the calendar, and then it would move forward and we'd need a presentation. So one of the questions that I have for the board is whether anybody had received any other feedback or something that would change your position or your thoughts on how that should be presented if needed at town meeting. And then I just wanted to confirm that we're set to have somebody there for the presentation. I think Bill has confirmed that he could do that, but that somebody's available to make that presentation at the town meeting if that becomes necessary. So anything that I should know about,
I have not heard any comments, no phone calls, nothing. So I think the one thing just to add on to what Amy's already said is that we are planning to use, if we have to, the presentation that was done at the preview meeting. So we don't have to go back and resurrect or create any new documents. I think we're set to go if in fact we need to do that. Perhaps it might be a good idea, Amy, could you send those out? That, I mean, I don't think Liz necessarily has seen that, so it'd be good for her to see. This isn't a complicated document or slides, but it's informative, and it's what we would what the personnel board would present if in fact we have to at the town meeting. And Nancy and Jim, even though they may have their copies, will send them to you too. So send an email. Any other feedback from anyone, Nancy or Jim, that you've?
I have not heard any.
Okay,
Nothing.
so I think we're really set for town meeting. We've got, so we're on the consent calendar, and which I guess means we're sort of first up at town meeting, and then I'll be there, and I'll be prepared if necessary to make any presentation that has to be made. Okay, any other thoughts about the town meeting that we as a personnel board need to talk about or need to discuss here?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Let's go on to item number 5, which is the class and comp study planning. And this is going to be a really
Wow.
important project and challenging, I think, but one that's that will, I feel confident that will generate the positive kind of results. And I'd like Amy to introduce Kelly, because Kelly's going to be the project manager, and either Amy can, or let Kelly discuss what her background is. I think it would be really, really important. But I have met Kelly in a previous Zoom session, and I'm confident that she has the kind of credentials and background and experience to lead this particular project for the town of Concord.
Sure. So I think we recognized that this is such an important project for the town. And I think the scope is significantly different than or wider than what we've done before, even though it sounds the same, class and comp, and most of the steps are the same. There's just a lot more to consider in terms of the way the workforce has changed, the labor market has changed, that sort of thing. So where I'm going is that's why I feel, I think, well, it wasn't just about me, that multiple people felt that we really needed a project manager for this. I know from having been involved in Concord with 3 studies in the past, the level of work that's involved, and I still expect that I will be spending many, many hours myself, but to really get all those details and track the details and communicate, then it makes sense to have a project manager. And that is why we sought out someone to do that, which Kelly Hebert is here, who will serve as the project manager and help us guide this. So I'll stop there. And Kelly, you mind kind of telling us about your experience? And
Sure. Yes, happy to do that. Thank you for having me tonight at this Zoom meeting. Thank you for having me here in Concord. I'm really excited. Amy's been great to work with in the 4 weeks or so I've been here. It was great to meet Bill. Kate took me around today to see some of the other community services buildings and the COA. So it's been a very warm welcome in the few weeks I've been here, and look forward to working with all of you in your capacity on the personnel board. Just a little bit about myself. I've lived in Lowell my entire life, still there, got three kids. My husband's a paramedic and helps run an ambulance company. And I am here really I've been in transition a little bit, but to give you some idea of my background, I have about 30 years experience in municipal government. Started actually working for the city of Lowell way back when I was in college at Emmanuel, and then went to Northeastern, got my master's in public administration. And since that time, many years ago, I have found my way to towns such as Belmont and Chelmsford. I was assistant town manager in both of those communities. I was also the director for HR in the city of Lowell for about 3 or 4 years. After I had worked with Bernie Lynch in Chelmsford, he recruited me to work in Lowell with him when he was city manager. And I was actually also the town administrator in the town of Topsfield. Now, in a lot of small towns like Topsfield, you not only have the pleasure of serving as the town administrator or the CFO, but I had the pleasure of also serving as a personnel director. So in that capacity, I was able to, for the very first time in the town's history, to help them to have a professional classification and compensation study done for their town. They had a number of unique situations. A lot of folks were, long-term employees were sort of hanging on step 9 of the grid on an average of 17 years. So they were in real need of having a formal classification and compensation study done. And through that process, I got to be very involved in every step along the way. So a lot of the information that I had worked on or coordinated during that time, I feel that will help serve me well in Concord as we, do a lot of the same types of work here in Concord, but Concord's a much larger town. And as we've been talking about, there's a lot of other components with regard to human services, municipal positions. You've also got your light department. So lots of challenges, but also lots of opportunities. 2008, I believe, was the last time Concord has done a formal study. So lots changed in the world and also with Concord's labor force. So I'm really looking forward to getting this underway. I don't want to belabor the point. I know that we sent out in our package 2 pieces of information that I hope if you haven't had time to review them, please do. Amy and I have been working to put together 2 things. Number one, originally it was actually started out as a list. Amy had said, well, tell me a little bit about your time in Topsfield and your other experience with doing compensation studies. And I started just by putting together a list of a scope of services we used in Topsfield and started really just elaborating on some of the project management tasks that really need to be done for the study to be efficient and effective. Right. So we can ask a consultant to come in and do a study for us, but and they'll give us some facts and some numbers and do a survey. But to do one well, you need to make sure that there is inclusion and that there is opportunity at every level to communicate one-on-one or in groups with the folks who are participating in the survey. So that will mean, communications with the personnel board, the managers, senior managers, the employees. So I put together a list, and that was in your packet, just to give you a sense of some of the tasks that we think will need to be done to make sure that this is a successful project. And then secondly, what we also did was put together a project plan. Now, these are all, these are all just with the best of intentions, with the limited information we have, really just try to set out some of the major milestones that we might have as a part of a successful project, including really, a time frame or general time frame that we can expect to hit some of those milestones and to complete the study. So a lot goes into it. I think, having Amy at the helm is a great service because she's been through this. She knows a lot of the folks who work here with the town. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with her and all of you in trying to see where this takes us. In FY 23, no, 24 is when our implementation is scheduled for. So while we're undertaking a study now, the intent is that once we get all of the results, that we will be able to formulate a plan that would then go into effect for a year from July. So all of that is really just a long way of saying that we've got a good sense of where we need to go and how we're going to do that. And with your help, hopefully that will be a successful process for us all. Thank you. Amy, did I miss anything?
I could talk all day about it in detail, so I won't do that. I guess I'll just focus on, what does the board think? No, I don't. There's nothing that immediately jumps out that I think you missed. I'd like to kind of understand, just make sure that we're talking about how the board would be included, how we approach the RFP, those sort of details so we can move forward. I will say our goal is to get the RFP on the streets ASAP by the end of April. And so, that's what I'm hoping, that we have enough information for that to leave this meeting, get the RFP, work with Bill or anyone else as needed, and get that out there. And then the discussions will continue through this as we go along about what's needed. So I'm going to stop and see how you would like to proceed. And I saw that Liz held up her.
I just have a quick question about the RFP. And when you send that out, are you inviting any particular companies to apply that you have information about? And can you share that information if you do?
Yeah, Kelly, do you want to?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yes. Well, and that is the objective of doing the RFP. Our intent is that we have laid out what we believe to be a very comprehensive list of all of the projects or tasks that will be involved with that. And once that is prepared, and when we say we want to get that on the street, what we're doing is we're advertising to let potential vendors know, qualified vendors know what we're doing, what we hope to do, and we're inviting them to give us their proposal that will be given to us in one envelope. And then in a separate envelope, we'll be inviting them to give us a price estimate, so a cost estimate. So that's a formal process we need to follow for a project of this scope. And we have a list of names. We've been doing some research. So we do have a few consultants we're going to send this to. But by following that process, we can make sure that we get the most responsive qualified bidder to assist us with this particular project.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Liz? Are you okay with?
Yeah, no, that sounds, I guess the next follow-up would be, what is the role for the personnel board in reviewing those, the bids that come in, or, one of the envelopes, what their scope of work is and the reputation of the companies and that sort of thing. Is that, I'm new to the committee, as you all know, so it's really an open question. Where does the responsibilities for the board fit in, Bill? Maybe that's a question for you or for Amy.
Well, it's a good question, and it's something that has already been asked. I've only been on the personnel board for 3 years, so we haven't had a similar situation with the necessity for an RFP. I've made it clear that the personnel board is very interested in providing input and feedback on the draft RFP so that it can reflect the concerns of the personnel board. I don't know, Amy, does the open meeting law sort of preclude us or preclude I would have to think it does, precludes the personnel board from meeting and as a group make suggestions?
No, you can make suggestions. You just have to post a meeting. If you've got a quorum of the board, you have to post a meeting and have that in a public discussion. If there is any aspect of it that is, it needs to be kept confidential or sensitive for some reason, then we should think about how to approach that. But would you say that, well, in terms of the RFP, I would say that what we were picturing is that we get a sense of where you all want to go tonight with it. And that Kelly could send out to the board a draft and invite the members to send back comments to Kelly to compile and put something together. You can't have a communication and email chain that involves all of you. That would violate the open meeting law. So it would have to be something that you're sending back comments to staff. Then we can see about next steps. This is whether it's going back for staff I'm sorry, is it coming back to the personnel board, or is staff finalizing it at that point with Bill? That was one of the suggestions on how to get it out most expeditiously. That's just the first stage. That's the RFP. Then there are other points along the way that we could talk about. What role the personnel board wants to play. For example, I would imagine that in reviewing the bids, you may want to have somebody reviewing the bids with us. If we're going to interview the consultants, we could arrange that. I think either through a public meeting, or if you have a representative to work with staff on that. So there are a few different approaches. I don't recall the personnel board being involved in the selection of the vendor before and all of that. I think that there was a mutual understanding of what the scope of the project was, and that staff went ahead and did that and reported back in with the personnel board at points as we went along. And then certainly the board was involved as we get to final recommendations or you know, sort of strategy, that sort of thing. Kelly, did you have anything more to add from your thoughts on how the board would be involved along the way? Oh, you're muted.
I think in this particular case, I don't know that we're going to have a massive number of respondents. And in which case, if we did, there would be a very good potential role for this board to have in terms of trying to figure out which of the responsive qualified vendors we feel has the best response for us. I know that there's probably 2 local vendors. We are reaching out as far as we can, but I don't see that there is going to be a huge overwhelming demand with responses by vendors. Typically what you would see is it becomes very methodical, that we would work with the purchasing department and our purchasing officer to make sure, in fact, we don't even have to be involved with that necessarily, but we will be. We could have maybe a committee that just selects the proposer. It's possible that if there's a member of the personnel board as an individual that would like to be on that review of the RFPs, maybe that would be a way to get some inclusion and some participation from the board. Maybe one member sitting in with maybe myself and the purchasing officer and Amy, and just making sure when we receive the bids, they come in 2 envelopes, you open them, you sign them in, and then the first thing is you review them for, are they responsive, are they qualified? And if they are, say you get 3 applications, if 2 of them are responsive and 1 isn't, you only take those 2, and then you would open up the cost envelope. So I don't see it as a very long drawn out process. If there's some way that the personnel board would like to be involved, it might be easier to perhaps designate one person who could be involved with us in that selection process. That might be an easy way to get some participation that would also give us, you know, your viewpoint on what we're doing and get you sort of involved in the project. So that might be a good way to connect the dots as far as the personnel board goes without necessarily having to get into all of the formality of a full meeting, if that helps at all.
Okay, it does help. Thank you. Any other comments, Nancy or Jim, regarding this project?
No, I have none at the moment. It's pretty conclusive, but I mean, it's loaded with lots of information. So
There's one point that came to my mind that I think we need to just put out there on the table. And that has to do with, let's see if I can find the, all right, so this is on the, I saw this on the project plan and overview. And this has to do with the 3rd bullet, which talks about, again, this is the project plan and overview,
yeah.
Roman numeral 1, project overview, A goals. And the third bullet says fully compensate and motivate staff with pay and a total compensation package that is competitive and so forth. So will the benefits that are currently offered to town non-union employees, will this also be a part of the survey or not? Because it's the only way you can fit this into, at least the language that I see here, is total compensation package. Well, total compensation package is pretty explanatory. I mean, it's benefits and it's pay, and there may clearly be some incidental things as well. So what are your thoughts, Kelly and Amy, as to the benefits piece that I'm mentioning here as part of total compensation?
I don't think that you can look at just the base pay rates without looking at the other details at some level. And then part of what we need to discuss is at what level. It has to be taken into consideration when those rates are set in the strategy. The more details we add, the more, the bigger the survey is, the study is. It might not be cost effective. It might not meet the timelines that we need. And so one of the things that Kelly and I have talked about is doing some sort of a menu of added on prices to see how far we could go with that. So the most basic answer, yes, Bill, I don't know how you could look at this stuff without taking into consideration how much detail we go into, how much does the consultant do. I think we've got to work our way through that to not.
Okay, well, I think that's probably makes it's logical and it's a good approach, but I think I don't know how you can talk total compensation without including the benefit element and component. And so, Kelly, do you have anything to add to this point?
Really just that we really did seriously consider the other potential pieces that might come into this. We really had to balance the primary goals of this project with respect to compensation and classification. We didn't want to go too far down another rabbit hole because we want to make sure that this is our primary goal, the primary project to move forward. It is very likely that we might find from this initial study that there are other components to our package that could be keeping people from wanting to work in Concord or to continue to work here. And so what we decided to do was to try to focus on the comp and classification, and where it might be practicable, maybe put in some add-on menu features at the end of our RFP that states maybe a separate a la carte menu of other projects that we might be able to add to the project, such as I could think the most simplest might be, take a look at our benefits packages. If you're coming to the community, where does that stop us from meeting our goals to attract and retain highly competent and qualified staff? So to your point, you're exactly right. To our point, we're trying to balance that reality with the need to get this on the street as soon as possible without getting it too bogged down in some of the other secondary objectives we have. So I think if I explain that correctly, and given that that is an issue, we might want to work in an extra paragraph into the draft RFP that states something to the effect of, to consider and review the benefits package of the town to make any recommendations as for further study or further recommendations. So we might find a way to incorporate that maybe at the end of the RFP. And if finances allow, be able to look at that a little bit deeper with the very same vendor who's going to do the larger project.
Okay.
Can I just comment too on health insurance, which is, of course, the biggest benefit, and it's been a real concern for Concord employees. And there are things to talk about there separately that could relate to strategy and how, what Concord's contribution rate was and the history of that, and the funding of OPEB, which has been a major consideration for Concord, the other post-employment benefits that Concord is given priority to. But I just want to say there's no way we can't consider what the town's contribution rates are in those insurance packages when when compensation strategy, the base pay is being set. That has to be part of it. So we have to have enough information and consideration to that for the consultants to help sort that through. But again, how detailed, how much of a study how do we look at? We're looking at co-pays and all the different types of things, you know. Again, there's a lot of details there. We have to make sure it's kept at the right level, and we'll be looking for the consultant to assist with that and to get your input on that as well.
For me, it seems important to make certain that this particular aspect of the study is wordsmithed correctly, so that in fact we can so that the consultant has a good understanding of what the expectation is. And certainly there are different ways to structure this, as I'm hearing you say, add-ons and sort of like an a la carte menu. But I think we're going to miss the boat in terms of providing to the citizens of Concord who are clearly worried about recruiting and retention to go 2/3 of the way and not to go all the way. It's almost, it seems like be a huge waste of resources and money. But anyway, that's we have to start with the RFP. So at least at this juncture, it would be necessary to ensure that the language and the expectation is properly set.
I agree, but just kind of an add-on comment there. Maybe that's obvious. There may be parts that we have other ways of getting done. So for example, you know, if it's too much to have the consultant to gather certain data, then Kelly may be able to work on that, or we could have staff do it so that the consultant can certainly use that data and take it into account and making the recommendations. It would still be used, but it's sort of, how do we get that? How do we present it? So
that's an excellent point. So, you know, it's depends on how you use the resources, and Kelly's obviously a resource. So, and some of this will, as we go forward, it'll become clearer as terms of who does what.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments about the comp study planning, the document that Amy and Kelly have provided?
I see that Ned Perry turned on camera. I don't know, Ned, if you were looking for an opportunity to comment.
Having been invited to Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street, having been invited or given the opportunity, I will comment that I think the chair is 100% correct here. I don't know how many of you were following your articles through the hearing and on to town meeting, but the Finance Committee declared that they're not going to get down into the granular part of the financial part of the personnel board's work. It went to the select board, and the select board also totally ignored any part of the compensation. So I think the chair is absolutely correct, and I would hope that Liz, with her tremendous background, will come on board and support the chair's urging that the health benefits of the town employees gets reviewed in this class and comp under that provision that the total compensation bill pointed out. The health benefits, I have not heard Amy explain to you as a personnel board, probably for 5 years. And I think the personnel board needs to understand how the non-union employees' health benefits are offered and how many are accepted. how many accept it or how many go through their spouse's benefits. And this area of the town government is not looked at by anybody, any other group. So thank you, Bill, for highlighting it and taking it on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ned, for your comments. I think we can, there's a motion that here that is contained about moving to authorize the chair to work with the staff to finalize the RFP. Yes, Amy?
I should say, I don't know if you know that Susan has her hand raised. I don't know if you wanted
No,
to.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bill and Amy. I just wanted to respond a little bit to what Ned said. And it's not that the select board is ignoring this issue, but we have appointed a personnel study task force, and which is doing a lot of work, and that's included in it, the benefits part of it. But I also wanted to point out that whatever the benefits are, they apply to union and non-union alike. So if we change the benefits for non-union personnel, it would automatically be included in the union contracts. So it's a comprehensive decision, which I think we need to keep in mind.
Okay.
And I think, although I believe that the town managers have through the years discussed it with the select board at executive sessions, because it has to do with union strategy, but not necessarily the full kind of discussion that that Ned has suggested, but I do think that has happened in that forum.
All right. What's sort of on the table is, how does the personnel board feel about having, I mean, I guess in this case, I'm sort of offering myself, but having the chair work with staff to finalize the RFP. It's sort of a, I guess, does anyone feel like he or she would like to do that, that particular activity?
No, I think you'd be fine at it. And I think you, Bill, you like to do it. So I think that's a good match.
Okay. Jim?
I have no objections.
Okay. And Liz,
That sounds great. And, to recognize what Ned mentioned, in terms of my background in health policy issues, if that's of any benefit, please call on me, Bill, and I'd be happy to support you.
Okay. I thank you for that. And I'm sure that will likely take place as we start to navigate down these waters. So I think we need to I'll entertain the motion about moving to authorize the chair. This happens to be on the back side of the agenda. I need one of the personnel board members to move that.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll make a motion to move to authorize the chair to work with staff to finalize the request for proposal for classification and comp study reflective of the project scope discussed by the personnel board.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, there's a second from Liz. All in favor?
Aye.
Liz? You're
Aye.
aye. And Jim Richardson?
Aye.
Nancy Crowley?
Aye.
And Bill Marachek, aye. Okay. Thank you all. And yes, I am looking forward to being able to participate in this particular effort, since I do have some background in.
Yeah, I knew that, Bill. I didn't want to take that away from you.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jim. But I would give it up, Okay, so I think we're moving to 6, the Personnel Study Task Force. Is there, Susan, do you have anything to, are you still here? Yes.
I am, yes.
Do you have anything to,
No,
To
they met
contribute.
on Monday and there was a survey done which had a very big response, like 180 responses to the survey. And they're in the process of going through that information and developing recommendations, which they will present to the select board.
is it to present to the select board or to present in their report?
Well, the report, they were appointed to make recommendations to select board. So they'll produce a report which will be presented to select board.
Okay. But
Sorry,
this is
what was-
all a
what
part
was the-
of the process.
Sorry, Bill. What was
No.
this? What was the survey?
It was an employee survey. I saw it after it was completed, and the only, it's a confidential survey. There are some charts and graphs about general answers, but the results have been confined to the Personnel Study Task Force and the Select Board and the Town Manager. So it covered a wide variety of employee satisfaction issues. And the task force is going to use that information to develop recommendations based on that, as well as recommendations for amendments to the personnel bylaw.
Susan, I listened to that, to the meeting, the Personnel Task Force meeting. And what I just didn't quite understand was the comment about the attorney. That the attorney was looking at this topic as if that was, the attorney had to approve the dissemination of this information?
Are you talking about town council?
The town council, sorry, yes.
Well,
what-
it was suggested to them that they submit the survey to the town council before it was sent out, but the task force did not want to do that, so they sent it out, and the town council is, I assume, going to review the results in terms of what impact it has on town liability.
Okay, I mean, I guess
Actually, I
What-
think Ned could speak more to this because I've not been really included in the whole process, but I know that Ned has, and he may have some comments on this.
Nothing like being put on the hot seat, Susan.
My
don't-
specialty.
I really don't have a lot of comments other to say that if you look back, as Anita Techley has done in the personnel board activities, back, and I went back to the town reports in 1990 and 1991. And the personnel board was meeting with employees and meeting with departments and doing a whole lot more outreach than has been done in the last 6 or 7 years. So hopefully this personnel board and you've met substantively more this year than I've seen you meet before, so good for you. And I hope that you will continue to do that. And we'll continue to perhaps look back at what previous personnel boards were doing to hold on to our town employees. I am told that the survey shows that we have really slipped in the municipal government status. We used to be in the top 10% of municipal employers in the Commonwealth. And I hope that Kelly will get us back there through her good work. I worked for 2 different classification compensation companies, as Bill knows from our discussion a year ago. And it's so important to have these town-wide surveys done, compare ourselves not only with the private sector, but with the public sector. And I'm now well beyond my suggested topic, Susan, so maybe I'll stop there. But I think that town council is taking a look at the survey to see if there are items within the survey that perhaps should be just limited to the task force. But I'm hoping that the bar charts that were compiled, the responses, and it was a great response. I'm told that the task force and actually town employees called me to thank me for getting it going. So I didn't get it going, the task force got it going. But it's all in trying to get Concord back towards the top of the municipal employers, because we should be there. We're a top town, and Kelly will get us there. Thank you.
The only thing, Ned, that I just like to clarify is that when I was listening to Susan, but you were not a member of the task force. So you did not have any personal input to the survey, I assume, nor have you seen the results of the survey, I assume.
I've seen bar charts.
You've seen bar charts.
I have not seen substantive responses. I did have input. The task force members contacted me and said, what about this question? What about that question? That's what committees and boards do in Concord, is they reach out to the citizens who are involved with town government. And I've been involved since the early 80s.
Yeah, I mean, what's striking to me though is that nobody called me, nobody checked in with me. There was no opportunity for me to provide any input. I wasn't asked to provide any input. So I'm just, it just strikes me as if we're going to have a personnel board, that there has to be an understanding about how the governance structure within the town of Concord should work. But having these one-off kind of inputs, I don't think is terribly helpful.
I'll send you the minutes from this personnel board from the 1990 and 1991 report.
I've seen them. I know, I've got those. I've
Good.
seen those.
Good.
I've
So
seen them.
you know what the personnel board used to do. You're not doing it. So there we are.
No, but I'm talking about an activity. This was the survey. This was intended to be not something that anybody on the personnel board should be involved with, nor the group that you had created last year. So I'm just a little
What do you
concerned
mean?
about it.
I'm sorry, Bill. What do you mean no one on the personnel board was supposed to be involved with?
The way that the whole structure was set up. I think actually, I'm off topic here. It's going past.
And I am too.
It's important that we move on. I guess what I'd like the minutes to reflect is my concern as to how the survey was conducted and how it's been shared. And we'll leave it at that. It's my concern. That's all. I can have concerns. So let's move on to, I think, is there any other business?
No.
No, I would like to kind of talk about how, and it doesn't have to be right now, but we can do it through, was how we could have a set meeting schedule. Third Tuesday of the month, every month, that sort of thing, so that we know when to meet. It's hard to get everybody's schedules to align and hard to plan a meeting when I don't know. So I wanted to explore that again, but we don't have to do that here. I can do it through email.
Okay, let's do that. Is there any other comment from anyone in the citizen? All right, I think we're at the point of moving to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 6:29 PM.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Jim
Aye.
Richardson,
Bye.
Nancy Crowley,
Aye.
Chris Hobbs, and Bill
Aye.
Maranchuk. Aye. Thank you all very much, and we will, we do not have another meeting scheduled here, at least currently, and we will keep, if in fact there is one, we'll obviously let everybody know. So thank you for participating
All right.
today.